Welcome to the adventure of a lifetime, a journey into the stories that shape us, the struggles that refine us, and the deeper truths that guide us toward love, compassion, and a more unified world. I'm your host, John Brodie, and today we begin with a story that invites us to see differently, to see beauty where the world sees none, to find value where society has forgotten it, and to recognize that even in the darkest places, there is holy ground. Joining me today is Linda Granville, author, advocate, and a witness to lives too often overlooked. And her memoir, Dark Holy Ground, is an invitation to all of us to look again. Linda, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, John.
Linda, I'd love to begin with a moment that gave your book its title, the experience on the beach with the coal and the dandelion. Can you take us back there and share what you felt at that moment?
Well, yes, it was years ago, about when my children were very small. I went on a spiritual retreat with the church, and we were told to go outside and find some treasure on this retreat and then come back 2 hours later with the treasure we'd find and tell us why we picked this treasure up. And it was the retreat was in a in a in the northeast of England, and it was near a very beautiful long sandy beach. And I ended up on that beach. We had to go off by ourselves and just find the treasure. And I ended up going on the beach. But when I got on the beach, I couldn't see a pebble, I couldn't see a shell, I couldn't see any seaweed. All I could see was black sea coal coming up from powdered black sea coal coming up off the beach. And I thought, oh gosh, where's my treasure? But now and again there was a little lumps of sea coal, and then I saw one about 5 inches in diameter. And and I thought, and I had a white jacket on, and I thought, oh, and it made my white jacket dirty, so I threw it away. And um, then I couldn't find anything else, so I went back and picked this sea coal up. And at the time, I was going through, this is why I was on the retreat, because I was going through 6 really quite serious negative things happening in my life. And I was about to throw this sea coal away again, thinking that it got nothing to do with anything. I don't want to go back to them memories type of thing. But before I threw it away, I stopped and I looked even closer at this piece of black carbon. And there was 6 specific layers of coal in this lump of, there was 6 layers. And I looked even closer, and in between these layers, little tiny crystals were forming. And I realized there and then that if this piece of carbon had stuck under the dark ground long enough, with all the pressure on the earth going heavy down on it, these crystals would have actually have turned to diamonds. And that was a really, really, it was like a liberation thing for me. And then as I was coming off the beach onto a sort of concrete path, and I saw these dandelions coming through this hard concrete, and I realized that even this beautiful flower can come through this hard ground. It was just fascinating to me. And so those 2 incidents themselves, well, the dandelion made me realize that how people today throw dandelions away as a useless weed. But in fact, that dandelion has got the most medicinal things in it. You can eat, it's edible, every part of it is edible, and it's a really healing plant. But people throw it away because they think it's a useless weed and they don't want weeds in their gardens. And it first came about in the Victorian time when, the king and queen wanted lush green grass lawns, and so they dug the dandelions up and threw them away to make their, and everybody followed suit. And then I thought about the coal, and that led me to go out and look for the diamonds in people.
Wow.
And I saw those diamonds, and it it was a beautiful, for me, it was my pathway to find these diamonds and stand beside them and listen and learn from them. That was the important thing. Yeah, so that's why I called my book Dark Holy Ground. Yeah.
It's a beautiful metaphor, and having read the book, I can see how it really talks about transformation and about seeing more than just the surface of things,
Mm,
and
mm.
something dismissed as dirty or worthless, and
Yeah.
actually containing seeds of transformation. You wrote, as you wrote, that it helps you recognize diamonds in people living in what you
Yes.
later called the book Dark Holy Ground. Your
Yes.
story begins even earlier, though, with a recurring dream you had as a child, the
Oh
journey
yes.
across the sand dunes with what
Oh
you call my friend. That's
yes.
kind of a signature
Yes.
moment for how you got started on this whole journey.
Exactly. Because I had a recurring dream between the ages of about 2 or 3 years old till I was about 19 years old. And in this dream, there was sometimes this dream came. Sometimes this dream came days apart, sometimes months apart, sometimes years apart. It always seems to come when I was having just a bit of negativity in my life. And I seemed to get this dream, and it stopped when I was 19. And it was about, I had a vision of two big sand dunes, um, one on the right and one on the left, and on top of the right sand dune was a brilliant white, energetic figure, and it was just stood on top of this sand dune, and 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 there was about 100 children the same age as me, about three years old, and throughout the whole dream, throughout all the years, I stayed at that age in the dream, and and there was this energetic figure, and we'd roll down the sand dunes, and the idea of the dream was to get down the bottom of the right sand dune and then get up to the top of the left sand dune. And when we got to the top of the left sand dune, we'd see a beautiful city. We'd arrive at this beautiful city. But as the years went on, we got a little bit down the right sand dune, and we kept falling over. But my friend always came and picked us up. And I always felt a really a warmth inside of me um, and this energetic figure. Although I couldn't see a real face. I could just see like a shadow of a beard. I think it was my child's idea of God, but that was only a thought. But but this came to be my friend. My friend, my friend always came to pick us up. But as each dream came, there was less and less children. And to cut a long story short, through the years, we came further down the sand dune, being picked up again and picked up again, until in the end, there was only two of us. And then towards the top of the left sand dune, uh, there was only me. And and I couldn't get up the final sand dune because it was high and so soft. It was such a heavy climb up it, and I kept slipping down. And my friend didn't turn up. And I was like, desolate, really. And then all of a sudden, my friend turned up. He took me by my right hand, and I can feel it. And I can feel it. I can feel that right hand. And we got to the top. He walked with me, or it walked with me. And we got to the top of the sand dune. And when we got there, all I could see before me were miles and miles, as far as the eye could see, of more and more sand dunes. But it's immediately struck me that absolutely didn't matter, because I was with my friend, and that was all that mattered. And I've come to realise, after writing my book, this book is a metaphor, really, because we traversed the changing dunes hand in hand with my friend, and that's what my life has been about. Traversing the changing dunes of my life, hand in hand with my friend. Yeah.
In the silence of dreams, a whisper calls my name, echoes of the child within, a dancing flame.
From age of 2 to 19, a story gently spun, a radiant figure by my side under the golden sun.
Stood atop a great sand dune, laughter filled the air. 100 children shared the joy, free as morning air.
Tumbled down the slopes with innocence so bright, lifted by unseen love, we danced through the night.
But as time rolled on, the dreams began to change. Fewer friends beside me,
The landscape feeling strange. But at the top of the dune, when I felt so alone, a hand took mine, steady as stone.
together we faced the endless horizon wide. In the shifting sands, it's you by my side.
The journey is the treasure, love conquers fear. I'm never alone.
My friend is always near. Storms may come and go, the path can feel unclear, yet every step I take, I know you're always near. Those endless dunes remind me it's not where we arrive, it's in the moment shared that truly make us thrive.
Like a phoenix we shall rise above the shifting sand, with memories that anchor, always hand in hand.
When the weight feels heavy, I close my weary eyes, recalling laughter from my youth. Dreams shall never
At the top of the dune, when I breathe in the light, in the warmth of love, I'll embrace the night.
Together we faced the endless horizon wide. In the shifting sands, it's you by my side. The journey is the treasure, love conquers fear.
I'm never alone.
My friend is always near.
That's very profound. Realizing at the end of the dream, wasn't really about reaching an end point. It was about
That's
being
right.
held and guided, and
Yes.
that was everything.
Yes. That was everything. Didn't need an endpoint. I was with my friend.
It's ongoing,
Mm.
ever
Yes.
going, as
Ongoing.
you're still going
Ongoing.
today.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly.
With in a way, this book is just another step on the adventure. As you share the adventures you live through, and if, as for all of you out there that anybody sees this, reads the book, I highly recommend it. It's just a wonderful story of adventures all over the world. Um, your story speaks very honestly about hardship, about poverty, single parenthood, and the weight of judgment.
Yes. Hmm.
What was it like to live as a single mother in that environment, and how did society's perceptions affect your sense of self?
Well, what my sense of self wasn't very good because I was a single mother living in the highest unemployed town in the UK, with the demise of its chemical industry, its shipbuilding industry, and the iron and steel industry. There was tens of thousands of local people out of work, and there were no jobs around. And and I travelled the world on my own. I emigrated as a £10 pom. I never had money, but I was a £10 pom. Went to Australia on a ship, came back by ship, went back overland on my own, overland to Australia. But then I came back pregnant in Australia. And 3 years after coming home, I lived with my mum. And then I got pregnant again 3 years later after coming home from Australia. And uh, I, I got pregnant, yeah. And I thought God couldn't possibly love me now. But 3 years later, I got pregnant again, yeah. And I felt God couldn't possibly love me. He could forgive me once for being pregnant, but not twice for being pregnant out of marriage. And um, and so, but then it was my turn to read in church because as soon as I came back from Australia, I joined a church and thought if I did enough good deeds, I'd go to heaven, you know. And I was on the church council and all this. And when I got pregnant, I told them, the vicar, and I said, look, tell the church council if they don't want me, you know, if they don't want me, I'll stay away. But he came back and said, oh, it's okay, Lindy, we want you. And anyway, it was my turn to read in church, but I hadn't looked at the Bible passage beforehand. This was 3 weeks after I realised I was pregnant. My mum and my cousin came to church with me, and they sat in the front pew. And I got up to the lectern to do the Bible reading. And a miracle happened, a big miracle for me, because I hadn't even looked at the passage, which I usually do before I do it reading in church. And then it was Romans 8, verse 31 to the end. And it said, if God is for us, who can be against us? And it goes, neither height nor depth nor principalities, and it blah, 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 and we are treated like sheep to be slaughtered. Then it finished. Nothing in all creation will ever be able to separate any of us from the love of God in Christ Jesus. And from
That's
that moment, I knew I was loved, warts and all, but just as importantly, so was every other sentient being. Nothing can separate any of us from the love of God. So that was a liberate, and I still was bigoted against and ostracized and stuck in poverty, but I knew I was okay, And there's a passage in my book about like feeling nothing. And then there's a little passage that helped me at that time. Um, and it was a quote from Martin Luther. And it was, God creates out of nothing. Until a man becomes nothing, God can make nothing out of him. And I would argue too, you know. But it's true. Until you become nothing, you go to your depths, don't you? And then God makes something out of you. And yeah, that's where I was at. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's very, and again, I've loved reading the book and listening to it. Linda actually did a beautiful audio version of the book where she reads the entire book. And it's just a heartwarming and energizing and inspiring story, I think. Your work with marginalized communities, with the unemployed, the homeless, those in poverty, um, what did you begin to see in people that others were missing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, because I was so ostracized myself and marginalized myself, it was easy to stand beside other people. And because I knew who I was, I knew I was loved. I knew I was loved. And so is every other sentient being. And so that gave me a compassion for other marginalized groups, to say, look, this is not what the world's telling you you are. Inside of you will tell you who you are and work with the spirit within you, you know what I mean? And I've always tried to pull out that spirit with people, that I know is within every sentient being. And if I'm convinced of that, because I'm convinced that it is there for every sentient being. So when I meet people, even if people for instance, there was an incident in my third chapter when I was working with young people, and it was the first paid job I'd had in 12 years, because I did voluntary work for years after, and then I got this for 9 months, and then there was another more years when I didn't have a paid job. But I did loads of voluntary work. But there was one incident I worked with young unemployed 16 to 18-year-olds. And in Britain, 16 to 18-year-olds, and they were all unemployed, and they came from areas with even the grandfathers out of work and the fathers out of work and things like this. But 16 to 18-year-olds in Britain they don't get any help from the government for anything. So this
Too young. They're too young to qualify.
yes, there were any benefits they had, because we have a family allowance that's given to every child in the UK, a little amount until they're 16. When they're 16, that little amount is taken off them, and they don't get any, and nobody gets any more benefits till they're 18 to 25. Then benefits stop for them. But in this area, everybody was unemployed. There were no jobs around, So a lot of young people went homeless because the parents couldn't afford to keep them. They wanted different things, and they wanted this, that, and the other. And so I brought my children in that. Some of my children's friends, their parents had 2 jobs, and they were going, they could go shopping for anything. My kids didn't have that. They never had a holiday. We went to a church weekend, Our yearly holiday was to go on a church weekend, about twice a year, a little, a few days away to this spiritual retreat thing, and with the Methodist Church, and that was their holiday. And I remember sometimes my daughter, she was studying drama for her GCSEs, and the school this was the saddest part, really, and the school needed the money in for the thing, but I didn't have the money. It was £100. I didn't have £100, and then the school rang me and said, look, if you can get half of it together, we'll pay the other half, and this, that, and the other. But I couldn't get that part together. But and when the deadline was there, I didn't have the money. But then the deadline, then I found out I could get the money together. And then I rang the school before it was closing on the Friday night, and but they'd stopped, and I couldn't get it to them in time. And my daughter never went on that. They were going on a trip to look at some place in London, and my daughter couldn't go because I couldn't get the money in time for her. And that saddened me. That really saddened me. And she was allowed to go to another one nearby, near the school or whatever. But it wasn't the same thing with going with a gang of friends and whatever. And they missed out on a lot. They missed out on a lot. And that's the biggest sadness. I really appreciate my kids for putting up with me, really, because every bit of work, I've always done voluntary work because I always needed to work from the guts,
Right.
and if it wasn't from the guts, it was a waste of my life, and I needed to change. I was involved with justice groups and, especially an organisation called Respond that looked into the issues of Teesside with these tens of thousands of people out of work and out to find new ways. But that happened 30 years ago. And the rest of the country they were all right. They were working and this, that. So we got called dole scroungers. We got called all kinds of things. They weren't in our situation. Their town wasn't, tens of thousands of people out of work. Ours was, but we learned 30 years ago how to get through that, and my book is all about getting through that. And now the world is very similar now to what we were 30 years ago. And so the clues we had 30 years ago, I want to give. And there's loads of clues in my book to how to come through all of that and be really positive and get far more back by sharing things we've got and things like this, So, yeah.
You write about discovering the beauty and resilience and untapped potential and that people in society overlooks. And I it's I've gone to each chapter kind of shares a different part of your adventure with different types of people. And the thing I found amazing was how you became a part of those groups. And I think it's partly because since your background had similarities to them in many ways, you didn't see them as other, where
No,
the rest of
no,
society was looking at them as outcasts or as
yeah,
unfortunates or something
yeah,
like that. You just saw them as people. You saw them
yeah,
as people needing a hand of a friend to basically
yes.
say,
To stand beside
hello.
them. To stand beside them, just to stand beside them in ways, those or different people who've been marginalised and thrown away by society understand, you know, yeah.
Well, that kind of feels like the heart of everything. Um, I thank you, Linda, for your courage, your honesty, and your vision. And now, again, I just want to say here, I always enjoy talking to you because you have such a tremendous depth of experience, and where a lot of people talk about, wanting to help and do things, you went out and just made things happen. I know that you have several favorite topics like time banks and other
Mm.
things that are all solutions. And
Yes,
I
yeah,
think that that is one of the most important reasons why I think people should read this book, because it's about solutions, and it's about helping all of us understand each other
mm,
as maybe more than neighbors, maybe brothers and sisters.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so,
I wanted to put a face to show people the people to throw away. The marginalised, the people who people, who were cut off from the mainstream of society because of prejudice or because of economic status and things like this, and it's the world wasn't built to be separate from each other. And everything I've done, I've tried to build bridges between people, especially I worked into faith as well. I've worked into faith, I've worked with LGBT groups, I've worked with all kinds of people. And you see a commonality between us all, and is to look to that common denominator in each person we encounter. A lovely thing, can I just say, a lovely thing happened just today. And I went into a little community cafe with my friend who's really quite ill, actually, and we went to this little community cafe. And there was this couple on a table, a few tables down, and she had an elderly couple, well, in their 60s. That's not elderly, really, but she had dyed her hair purple, and he dyed his beard purple. So, I shouted, and it's connection. It's to finding a connection with people. And a beautiful thing happened. So I sort of shouted loud, not shout, but talked loud over. And I said, oh, your beard looks good and your hair looks lovely, And that started a conversation. And the man, and it was such a it was a beautiful conversation. And he said, oh, we wear it to commemorate our son. And he died 4 years ago. This just happened this afternoon. So every minute there's an opportunity to talk to people, every minute. And this was this afternoon. And then he told us about the treatment and how the doctors made a big mistake. They didn't really take notice of his illness. And anyway, then he decided to get to the hospital himself or whatever. Something like that happened, to do with the doctors really dismissing him really a little bit and not saying, oh, well, anyway. But he died. He was took to hospital and he died there. And it was serious. And the wearing this, the mother's dyed her hair purple and he's dyed his beard purple, because that was his favourite colour. Isn't that beautiful? That was his favourite colour. And lots of people said, even the bus drivers stop and say, I like your beard. And that's the opportunity to tell his story, because people go to him, because of his purple beard and her purple hair. And I thought, what a beautiful thing to remember. And every opportunity he gets, he tells us, he wants people to learn of the injustice, of that happened to him. Without, because people come to him and want to hear it, and I thought that just happened this afternoon. And that's what we can, we tend to, if we sit on a bus, we tend to not talk to people. There's so many lonely people out there who are dying to have a conversation with somebody. I'm one of them. I go to a cafe to have a conversation because I live by myself. And that was a beautiful thing this afternoon, And so every moment you can get a gift from somebody. You can get a gift. And so I'm thinking, how can I do I bow my head to come up with a book? I don't know. I'm not sure.
I think it's great. Well, it fits with the whole story. I just want to really recommend that. I'll have a link to where you can purchase the book and everything after this. But I've worked with Linda a lot on the book, helping put it together and get it published and everything. And one of the things that I've been most excited about is we have put together a collection of music. And the song you're about to hear is inspired by Linda's journey, by the coal and the diamonds and the dandelion and its forgotten beauty, by the places, by the lives lived in places the world often ignores. It's a song of struggle, of awakening, and of love that never leaves us. This is Dark Holy Ground.
In the heart of Middlesbrough, where the iron once roared, echoes of the past whisper behind closed doors.
Once a place of labor, ships and steel. Oh yes, the rhythm of our lives, a work of sacred quest. But the factories fell silent, dreams lost in the dust, and hope ran like water. But Linda learned to trust. While searching for diamonds, she started to recognize them, shining brightly within people in a world so uncertain. She wasn't alone inside. Community around her, lifting hearts from the ground. In the shadow of struggle, we've learned to be profound. On this dark, holy ground, we're rising from the fall. In the depths of our sorrow, we hear the sacred call. Resilience, strength, a treasure we found. We are walking together on this holy, sacred ground. Oh, poverty, judgment, like walls that confine. Yet we reach through the darkness where the sun began to shine. Each story told in silence, with a heart that breaks. In the midst of their suffering, Linda felt the world awake. Faith like a lighthouse, guiding us to shore. Through the storms of exclusion, we're brave and we soar. No more on the margins, we rise from the dirt. The voice of the unheard is where hope finds its worth. On this dark, holy ground, we're rising from the fall. In the depths of our sorrow, we hear the sacred call. Resilience, strength, a treasure we found. We are walking together on this holy, sacred ground. Linda Granville lit fires in our hearts, with tales of the overlooked where the spirit imparts. A challenge to the towers where money is the crown, but the strength of our spirits, that's where truth is found. So let's rise from the ashes, let's lift up our song. For every hand that fell, together we belong. Walking on this dark, holy ground, we break free. Where suffering and beauty together rise to be.
Just before we go, I just want to make sure that I want to say really why I wrote this, why suddenly it's really important for me. Because just over a year ago, there was riots in my hometown in Middlesbrough. And there was riots all over the country and across Europe as well. Far-right racial rhetoric that was going on. And at the same time, my grandson was born. And my book counteracts all that racial divisive rhetoric. Because my whole book is how to bring people together and clues how to do it. And I really, really want this book out there, before the next elections, so that people can see the face that of people who we're against, and maybe hopefully find a bit more compassion for them. And it's so important. I don't want my child or any grandchild like my or any person to live in a world that's full of hate, full of division. And I really feel this book was meant to be written. And I really am passionate to get the issues out there so people can be more, we won't have any more riots. In fact, a car was burnt down outside my granddaughter's flat in Middlesbrough, and that was made a move and going further away from me. And but we don't need people to move. We need to have more compassion and working into faith. I've got clues of how to bring different faiths together, how to, for the sake of the whole community, to have more holistic communities. There's lots of clues of how to work with young people, how to work with, I don't know, but that's
beautiful.
why I'm passionate about it.
Yes, and I can't think of any better way to end our little session here. I think we'll do more. We'll have to do more because I would like to actually maybe, for future sessions, delve into some of the specific chapters and have
brilliant.
you elaborate on those. We actually have a whole bunch of songs that are tied to different chapters, so we can actually feature some music as we go along. But I will just, for today, I just want to thank you, Linda, for writing the book, and I'm so glad that I got exposed to it and I've had so much time to spend with it, and helping with the audio recording and everything else. And
John,
it's,
I really need to interrupt because I really want to thank you. Because I could not, I don't do social media. I don't do anything. I'm 80 years old now.
Well, this was, as you know, this was definitely a labor of love for me. You've become a very close friend, and here this is one of the amazing things of our modern world, which I have great appreciation for, because Linda lives in the countryside in England, along the sea coast, not far from the sea coast, and here I am in South Florida, not far from the sea coast of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Totally different worlds, and yet Linda has become, thanks to this world of Zoom and so forth, and social media, has become one of my closest friends, who I've unfortunately never met, but I'm confident that we'll meet sometime in the future in person. Anyway, I just thank you very much, Linda, and we will end this this first episode now, and I thank everybody for listening. Again, I'll have a little right after this. I'll have a little thing with where you can purchase the book, a link to purchase it on Amazon. It's available at Amazon and through Kindle and Audible. And again, highly recommended. I think it'll become a treasured possession of yours that you can spend a lot of time with, reading through and enjoying a wonderful adventure of a lifetime. So that's the end of our podcast today, The Adventure of a Lifetime. And I look forward to having many more wonderful times to share with you and with Linda. And so again, thank you, Linda. And we'll
thank you, John.
Very soon.
I appreciate it, really.
Thank you.
Bye.
Cheers.
A treasure we found. We are walking together.